All right, guys, let's take a look at Chapter 8. In Chapter 8, we're going to see some Gothic motifs happening in Chapter 8. So there's a few Gothic motifs that are going to be important here. So let's just read a bit and we'll focus on some stuff in our close reading. So, for reasons unfathomable to the most experienced prophets in Macomb County, autumn turned to winter that year. We had 2 weeks of the coldest weather since 1885. Atticus said, Mr. Avery said it was written on the Rosetta Stone that when children disobeyed their parents, smoked cigarettes, and made war on each other, the seasons would change. Jem and I were burdened with the guilt of contributing to the aberrations of nature, thereby causing unhappiness to our neighbors and discomfort to ourselves. Okay. There's always this sort of comic understatement that we've seen before that Scout uses a lot. And in this case, there's a connection with Mr. Avery. Okay, so the weather went crazy. Okay, so we're going to see freakish weather and strange distortions of natural events. Aberrations means distortions, something unnatural. Okay, so aberrations of what? Nature. What's happening? We've got the coldest weather in a long, long time, maybe 50 years or so. And why? According to Mr. Avery. So Mr. Avery is like the old generation, right? The older generation. And he's saying when you break all the rules and you have this bad behavior, nature goes crazy, the world goes crazy. So what's Mr. Avery teaching here? Mr. Avery is saying, don't break the rules. Keep the customs, keep the rules and traditions of your society. Well, what would those be? He's saying it's unnatural to have this unnatural behavior. Well, what are the rules and the traditions of the society? Well, part of that is there in the South. Racism. It was legal. Racism was part of their laws. So Mr. Avery is going to be saying, well, don't mess around with anything. Everything's good the way that it is. But we're going to see some problems that arise through that. Old Mrs. Radley died that winter, but her death caused hardly a ripple. The neighborhood seldom saw her except when she watered her cannas. Jem and I decided that Boo had got her at last, but when Atticus returned from the Radley house, he said she died of natural causes, to our disappointment. Ask him, Jem whispered. You ask him, you're the oldest. That's why you ought to ask him. Atticus, I said, did you see Mr. Arthur? Atticus looked sternly around his newspaper at me. I did not. Jem restrained me from further questions. He said Atticus was still touchous about us and the Radleys, and it wouldn't do to push him any. Jem had a notion that Atticus thought our activities that night, last summer, were not solely confined to strip poker. Jem had no firm basis for his ideas. He said it was merely a twitch. Next morning I awoke, looked out the window, and nearly died of fright. My screams brought Atticus from his bathroom, half-shaven. The world's ending, Atticus! Please do something! I dragged him to the window and pointed. No, it's not. It's snowing. All right, what's happening here? Okay, we just heard about the Rosetta Stone, which is an ancient stone with lots of different languages on it, and it has some ideas about the end of the world and stuff. And Scout sees snow, and she doesn't know what she's seeing. It's the first time she's seeing snow. She thinks the world is ending. Well, southern U.S., right? They're in the southern U.S. So snow is rare down there. They don't really get snow. It's very rare. It's not impossible, but extremely rare. So strange weather. Jem asked Atticus would keep it up. Jem had never seen snow either, but he knew what it was. Atticus said he didn't know any more about snow than Jem did. I think, though, if it's watery like that, it'll turn to rain. The telephone rang, and Atticus left the breakfast table to answer it. That was Eula May, he said when he returned. I quote, "As it has not snowed in Macomb County since 1885, there will be no school today." Eula May was Macomb's leading telephone operator. She was entrusted with issuing public announcements, wedding invitations, setting off the fire siren, and giving first aid instructions when Dr. Reynolds was away. When Atticus finally called us to order and bade us look at our plates instead of out of the windows, Jem asked, "How do you make a snowman?" "I haven't the slightest idea," said Atticus. "I don't want you all to be disappointed, but I doubt if there'll be enough snow for a snowball, even." So, even though the snowstorm is a rare, freakish weather event, there's not a lot of snow, right? It's deep in the south. It's really hot down there usually. So they did get a little bit of snow, but it's rare to everyone. Calpurnia came in and said she thought it was sticking. When we ran to the backyard, it was covered with a feeble layer of soggy snow. "We shouldn't walk about in it," said Jem. "Look, every step you take's waste in it." I looked back at my mushy footprints. Jem said if we waited until it snowed some more, we could scrape it all up for a snowman. I stuck out my tongue and caught a fat flake. It burned. "Jem, it's hot." "No, it ain't. It's so cold it burns. So don't eat it, Scout. You're wasting it. Let it come down." "But I want to walk in it." "I know that, but we can go walk over at Miss Maudie's." Jem hopped across the front yard. I followed in his tracks. When we were on the sidewalk in front of Miss Maudie's, Mr. Avery accosted us. He had a big pink face and a big stomach below his belt. "See what you've done?" Notice how Mr. Avery is blaming the children. "Hasn't snowed in Macomb since Appomattox." Appomattox. "It's bad children like you makes the seasons change." So notice Mr. Avery. I wondered if Mr. Avery knew how hopefully we had watched last summer for him to repeat his performance, and reflected that if this was our reward, there was something to say for sin. I did not wonder where Mr. Avery gathered his meteorological statistics. They came straight from the Rosetta Stone. Okay, so there's some kind of ancient authority here. The Rosetta Stone is an ancient archaeological tablet that Mr. Avery is trying to invoke for his weather predictions, but it's fake. Like, this is ignorant and unreliable use of these historical archaeological relics. So it's not a good use of facts. Fake news from Mr. Avery. "Jem Finch, Jem Finch. Miss Maudie's calling you, Jem. You all stay in the middle of the yard. There's some thrift buried under the snow near the porch. Don't step on it." "Yes'm," called Jem. "It's beautiful, ain't it, Miss Maudie?" "Beautiful, my hind foot. If it freezes tonight, it'll carry off all my azaleas." Miss Maudie's old sun hat glistened with snow crystals. She was bending over some small bushes, wrapping them in burlap bags. Jem asked her why she was doing that for. "Keep 'em warm," she said. "How can flowers keep warm? They don't circulate." "I cannot answer that question, Jem Finch. All I know is if it freezes tonight, these plants will freeze. So you cover 'em up. Is that clear?" "Yes'm, Miss Maudie." "What, sir? Could Scout and me borrow some of your snow?" "Heavens alive, take it all. There's an old peach basket under the house. Haul it off in that." Miss Maudie's eyes narrowed. "Jem Finch, what are you going to do with my snow?" "You'll see," said Jem, and we transferred as much snow as we could from Miss Maudie's yard to ours. A slushy operation. "What are we going to do, Jem?" "You'll see," he said. "Now get the basket and haul all the snow you can rake up from the backyard to the front. Walk back in your tracks, though," he cautioned. Are we gonna have a snow baby, Jem? No, a real snowman. Gotta work hard now. Jem ran to the backyard, produced the garden hoe, began digging quickly behind a woodpile. Placing any worms he found to one side, he went to the house, returned with the laundry hamper, filled it with earth, and carried it to the front yard. So what's he getting? He's getting dirt and earth in these baskets. When we had 5 baskets of earth and 2 baskets of snow, Jem said we were ready to begin. Don't you think this is kind of a mess? Looks messy now, but it won't later. Jem scooped up an armful of dirt, patted it into a mound, in which he added another load, and another until he had constructed a torso. Jem, I ain't ever heard of a nigger snowman. He won't be black long. So notice there's a mention here of race, okay, the word nigger, and a black snowman. Okay, so there's a direct connection to dirt and blackness. Okay. Jem procured some peach tree switches from the backyard, plated them, and bent them into bones to be covered with dirt. He looks like 70 Crawford with her hands on her hips, I said. Fat in the middle and little itty-bitty arms. I'll make 'em bigger. Jem sloshed water over the mudman and added more dirt. He looked thoughtfully at it a moment, then he molded a big stomach below the figure's waistline. Jem glanced at me, his eyes twinkling. Mr. Avery's sort of shaped like a snowman, ain't he? So he's making the snowman shaped like Mr. Avery. Jem scooped up some snow and began plastering it on. He permitted me to cover only the back, saving the public parts for himself. Gradually, Mr. Avery turned white. Using bits of wood for eyes, nose, mouth, and buttons, Jem succeeded in making Mr. Avery look cross. A stick of stove wood completed the picture. Jem stepped back and viewed his creation. Okay, so what do we have here? We have an important symbol. Okay, the symbol of the snowman. So we've got a snowman made out of dirt. Okay, so he's all black. And they cover the black part, they cover it all up with snow. Okay, so there's technically a layer around it and on top of it. Okay, but I'm just going to draw it like this so you get the idea that it's still black underneath. Well, what does it mean? The snowman. So 2 possibilities. One, okay, it's the black people controlled and covered with the white man's rules and laws and society. But, so that's one possibility, okay? That one's less obvious. But since it's characterizing Mr. Avery, what the more likely key symbol is, okay, is that the white people underneath white people are corrupt and dirty. And why? Because of racism, cruelty, lies. That's what's unnatural. What's really unnatural is the white people, is the Mr. Averys who are saying, oh, follow all the rules of the society, but really underneath the surface, they're inhuman and unnatural and corrupted, treating people badly. Even Miss Maudie gets picked on for, taking care of her flowers and things like that. So 2 possible interpretations of the snowman symbol, very important symbol, but we're going to kind of highlight the second one.